My wife cheated on me with our financial advisor, claiming he stole $250, $0 from our joint account, and now she's suing me for half the property, even though she secretly transferred $100, $0 to her sister before the scandal exploded. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this kind of story, but life has a way of throwing you into the deep end when you least expect it. The craziest part, it all started with a simple feeling that something was off. I mean, everything seemed fine on the surface. Lena was her usual bitchy self, demanding her way, throwing tantrums over trivial things, but that's just her. She's always been a handful, so I brushed it off. Little did I know, beneath that sharp tongue and icy attitude, she was planning something that would shatter my world. It all began about 6 months ago. I'd been working late more often than usual. My role at the firm was demanding, and I was trying to get a big deal over the line. Lena, of course, didn't like me spending so much time away, but I thought I was doing everything for us, building a future. She'd complain, call me a workaholic, but I figured she was just jealous. But then I started noticing small things, missing jewelry, strange texts on her phone she'd quickly hide, and her suddenly becoming overly secretive about her laptop. Nothing concrete, just enough to make me suspicious, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. One night I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through some emails when I noticed a new bank notification pop up. It was from our joint account. The amount was strange, $100 transferred to an account I didn't recognize. I froze. My heart started pounding. I immediately checked the online banking, and there it was. The transfer was made to her sister's account, Lisa. The reason? She'd claimed it was a gift for Lisa's wedding, but the timing was suspicious. Why would she need to transfer that much money without telling me? It was strange, but I brushed it off as some stupid misunderstanding. Then came the real shock. I found a receipt for a luxury hotel stay in the city, booked under her name for a weekend when I was out of town. The dates matched up with her business trip, but I knew she wasn't working. She'd been sneaking around, and I had no idea why. I started digging through her stuff, her emails, her phone, her social media, and that's when I found it, the messages. They weren't just innocent flirtations or late-night texts. They were full-blown conversations with her financial advisor, Mark. The kind that made my stomach turn. I couldn't believe it. Lena had been sleeping with Mark, and not just casually. The messages were explicit, filled with talk about how they needed to be careful, how she couldn't wait to see him again, and even plans to meet in secret. The worst part, she was lying about everything. She claimed Mark was just a friend, that he was helping her with some investments, that she had no idea about the transfer. She denied everything when I confronted her, calling me paranoid, accusing me of invading her privacy. But I knew better. The evidence was clear as day. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My mind was racing. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this, all while pretending to be the perfect wife? I'd always trusted her, and now I felt like a fool. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial. She lied about the money, transferred it secretly, and then had the nerve to lie to my face. I was furious, confused, and deeply hurt. I couldn't believe I'd been blind to it all. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was hiding a whole different life behind my back. That night I stayed awake for hours trying to process everything. My mind kept circling back to the money. The stolen $100, $0, the secret meetings, the lies. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't know what I'd say or how she'd react. Would she admit everything? Would she lie her way out of it again? I felt betrayed, not just as a husband, but as a man who thought he had some control over his life. Turns out, I was just a pawn in her game, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to keep her secrets hidden. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I started planning what I'd do next. I knew I couldn't just brush this off. I needed answers, and I needed to protect myself from whatever she was planning. I had a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning, and I was about to find out just how deep her lies ran. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a train. My head was pounding and my stomach was in knots. I kept replaying everything from the night before, her secret transfers, the messages with Mark, the fake stories about her business trips. It was all so surreal. I never thought Lena, my wife, the woman I'd trusted for 10 years, would do something like this. But here I was, staring straight at the evidence, knowing I had to confront her. I just didn't know how or when. I decided to wait until I was calmer, but that was easier said than done. Every time I looked at her, I felt this bubbling mix of anger and disappointment. I had built a life with her, good times, bad times, everything in between. And now all I could see was this betrayal, this lie that had been hiding in plain sight. I needed a plan. I couldn't just burst into her office or accuse her outright. That would make her defensive. I had to be strategic. Over the next couple of days, I started gathering more evidence. I hacked into her email, something I'd never thought I'd do, but I was desperate. I found more proof of her affair, explicit messages, plans to meet Mark in hotels, even discussions about how she'd drain our joint account and make it look like Mark was stealing from us. It was all there. The money transfer to her sister, that wasn't just a gift. It was part of her scheme to cover her tracks, to make it look like she was innocent. She transferred the money before the scandal exploded secretly, without my knowledge. Every new piece of evidence made my blood boil. Meanwhile, Lena was acting strange. She became more bitchy, snapping at me over nothing, accusing me of being paranoid and jealous. She insisted she loved me, that I was overreacting, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But I knew better. I saw her sneaking around, hiding her phone, deleting messages. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I was already 2 steps ahead. I decided I needed to confront her directly, but I wanted to do it on my terms. I wanted her to admit everything, or at least slip up. One afternoon, I finally decided to call her bluff. I sat her down in the living room, my heart pounding. I laid out all the evidence I'd collected, piece by piece. Her face went pale when I showed her the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the messages. She tried to deny everything, calling me a crazy possessive husband, claiming I'd gone through her phone without permission. She said Mark was just a business associate, that the money transfer was a loan she was planning to pay back. She even threw in some classic lies, saying she never cheated, that I was imagining things, that I was just jealous because she was more successful than I was. But I wasn't buying it. Seeing her squirm, hearing her lie so blatantly, made my stomach turn. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I told her I knew about the affair, about her plans, about everything. Her reaction, she burst into tears, claiming she was under so much stress, that she loved me but needed something more, that she was just lonely. She accused me of being a terrible husband who didn't appreciate her. She said she only cheated because I was never there, that I was too focused on work. It was all bullshit, but hearing her say it made me realize she was trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could she be so bitchy, so full of lies, and so utterly selfish? I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and demand the truth, but I held back. I knew I needed to keep my cool if I was going to get to the bottom of this. I told her she had to leave, that I needed space to think. She begged, pleaded, cried, trying to manipulate me into forgiving her, or at least giving her another chance. But I knew better. I wasn't about to let her destroy what was left of my trust, my dignity. That night I sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall, trying to process everything. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was the realization that the woman I loved had been lying to my face for months. She'd been screwing around with Mark, secretly transferring money, and then trying to cover her tracks with lies and tears. I felt stupid for trusting her, for believing she was the woman I married. But I also felt a flicker of something else, anger. Pure, unrelenting anger. I knew I had to do something about it, and fast. I couldn't keep living like this, not knowing the full extent of her treachery. In the back of my mind, I was already planning my next move, whatever it took to get her out of my life and make her pay for this mess. Because if there's one thing I've learned from this nightmare, it's that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to fix. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let her get away with it. The days that followed were a blur of planning and frustration. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lena's face, her fake tears, her smirk when she thought she was getting away with everything. I kept thinking about the money, the lies, and how she'd secretly transferred that $100, $0 to her sister before I even knew what was happening. That was the biggest slap in the face. She had been so calculated, so manipulative, and I was just some pawn in her game. I knew I had to act carefully. Confronting her again outright seemed pointless now. She'd already lied so much. I doubted she'd tell the truth unless I had undeniable proof. That's when I decided I'd go for a full financial audit, pull every record, every transaction, leave no stone unturned. I contacted a private investigator, not because I wanted to catch her cheating, though that was part of it, but because I needed proof of her financial schemes. If she was planning to hide even more money, I wanted to know about it now, not later. While waiting for the investigator, I also reached out to a lawyer just to get some legal advice. I told him everything: her affair, the money transfers, her attempts to manipulate me. The lawyer, a guy named Mark, was blunt. He said I had grounds for a divorce, especially given the infidelity and the financial deception. He also warned me about her trying to claim half the property, even though she secretly transferred money to her sister. That was a red flag. She was trying to hide assets, probably to protect herself from a potential settlement. Meanwhile, Lena was still trying to keep things normal, acting like nothing was wrong, throwing her bitchy attitude around, accusing me of overreacting. She'd call me paranoid, say I was jealous, that I didn't trust her, but I could see through it. I knew her game now. She was desperate to keep her secrets hidden, to protect her new life with Mark, and to keep me from uncovering what she'd done. Then the investigator finally came through with the report. It was worse than I imagined. He found multiple transfers to her sister's bank account, all made just before she started her affair with Mark. Some of the transfers were for small amounts, $10, $0, $15, $0, but others were huge, including that $100, $0. The investigator also uncovered a series of encrypted emails between Lena and Mark, discussing their plans, their meetings, and even how to split the money if things got messy. She'd been planning this for months. That was the moment I knew I had enough evidence to confront her again, this time with everything laid out in black and white. I didn't want her to deny anymore. I wanted her to see that I'd caught her red-handed. I called her into the living room, laid the documents out on the table, and watched her face turn pale as she saw the evidence. She tried to deny it all, of course. Said the investigator was wrong, that I was twisting things, that Mark was just helping her with her investments. She kept repeating how she loved me, how she never meant to hurt me, that I was just jealous of her success. I could see her trying to manipulate me again, but I wasn't falling for it. This time I was calm, precise, and relentless. I told her I knew about her affair with Mark, about the secret transfers, about her lying to my face for months. I told her I was done with her lies, that I'd had enough of being played like a fool. I was furious, but I kept my voice steady. I informed her that I was going to file for divorce, that I was taking her to court for the money she stole, and that I was going to make sure she paid for her lies. Her reaction: she started crying, real crocodile tears this time. She begged me to forgive her, said she was sorry, that she loved me and didn't mean for any of this to happen. She claimed she was just stressed out, that Mark was just a friend, that she'd only transferred the money because she thought I was going to leave her anyway. She threw in that she'd do anything to fix it, to make it right. But I wasn't buying it. I knew her game now. She'd been lying to my face for months, and I was done with the lies. I told her she needed to leave the house, that I couldn't live with her anymore. She screamed, called me a bastard, accused me of ruining everything. But I stayed firm. I told her I wanted her gone, and I'd be going to the lawyer's office the next day to get everything started. I knew this was the end, but I also knew I had to protect myself from whatever she might do next. That night, I sat alone, staring at the empty space where Lena used to sleep. I felt a mix of relief and emptiness. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and emptiness because I realized I'd lost someone I cared about, someone I thought loved me. But deep down, I also felt something else: vindication. She tried to ruin me financially, to manipulate me emotionally, but I'd outsmarted her. I'd exposed her lies, and now I was going to take back control of my life. As I packed a bag and prepared to leave her behind, I couldn't help but think about what I'd learned from all this. Trust is fragile, and when it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But sometimes you have to cut your losses, face the truth, and move on. That's what I was going to do, and I promised myself I'd never let anyone do this to me again. The morning after I confronted Lena, I felt strange, like a weight had been lifted, but at the same time I was hollow inside. I had all the proof I needed, and I'd made the decision to end this nightmare. I called my lawyer first thing, set up an appointment, and told Lena she had to leave immediately. She was still crying, begging, insisting she loved me and it was all a mistake, but I wasn't buying any of it. I'd heard enough lies. She kept pleading, throwing a tantrum, screaming that I was ruining her life, calling me a bastard for ruining her reputation. She said she was sorry, that she'd do anything to fix this. But I knew better. Sorry doesn't erase months of lies, secret transfers, and betrayal. Sorry doesn't change the fact that she'd been screwing around with Mark, secretly transferring money to her sister, and trying to manipulate me into forgiving her. I told her she had to go, and she finally left, slamming the door behind her. I sat there alone in the quiet, feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had the truth, and anger because I'd been so blind for so long. I kept replaying everything, the stolen money, her lies, her manipulations, and I realized how deep her betrayal went. I'd trusted her, loved her, and she'd been playing me for months. That realization burned worse than anything else. The lawyer and I started working on the divorce papers right away. I also filed a claim to recover the stolen money, her transfer to her sister, the secret savings, everything that was hidden or transferred without my knowledge. I knew she'd try to fight me, probably claiming she deserved half the property or some sort of settlement, but I had the evidence now. The lawyer warned me she might try to claim she was entitled to half because we were married, but I had proof she was actively hiding assets and cheating. While I was going through all this, I decided to call Mark, her financial advisor. I wanted to hear his side, see if he'd cooperate. Surprisingly, he was pretty straightforward. He admitted their affair, said he'd been helping Lena with her financial situation, and that she'd asked him to manage some transfers to her sister because she didn't want me to know. He seemed remorseful, maybe realizing he'd been caught in her web. I told him I'd be reporting him to the authorities if he didn't cooperate fully in the investigation. He agreed to give a deposition and cooperate, knowing he was in the wrong. Meanwhile, Lena was trying to spin her story to her friends and family, claiming I'd become paranoid and obsessive. She painted herself as a victim, saying I'd gone through her things without permission, that I was jealous and insecure. I didn't care. I knew the truth, and that's all that mattered. I was done with her lies, done with her manipulations. I was finally taking control of my life. The process of dividing everything was a nightmare. She claimed she deserved half the house, half the savings, half everything because we were married. But I had the proof of her secret transfers and her affair. I presented the evidence in court, and it was enough to show she'd been actively hiding assets. The judge ordered her to pay back the stolen money, and the property division was settled in my favor. She got nothing, and I got to keep what was legally mine. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole experience changed me. I thought I knew Lena, thought I knew my life. Turns out I was living with a liar, a manipulator, someone who was willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. The betrayal hit hard, but it also made me realize how important honesty and trust are. I learned not to ignore the small signs, to listen to my gut and to be careful who I trust with my life and my money. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I lost a lot, my wife, my peace of mind, my sense of security, but I gained clarity. I learned that sometimes you have to cut out the toxic people, no matter how much it hurts, to rebuild a better life. I'm still healing, still figuring out what's next, but I know one thing for sure. I'm never letting anyone betray me like that again. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever. After everything was settled legally, I thought the worst was behind me. I thought I could finally breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next bombshell to drop. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you're least prepared. Sure, Lena was out of my life, and I had managed to recover some of the money she'd stolen, but the emotional scars ran deeper than I expected. Trust was shattered, and I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. One thing I hadn't fully anticipated was the aftermath with her family. Her sister Lisa had no idea Lena was secretly transferring money for her own benefit. When I confronted Lisa, who seemed genuinely surprised, I decided to be honest. I told her what Lena had done, how she betrayed both of us, and that she transferred a significant amount of money without my knowledge. Lisa was furious. She admitted she'd been kept in the dark, that Lena had always been manipulative and selfish. I told her to be cautious with Lena from now on, warning her that her sister was capable of anything for her own gain. Meanwhile, I started focusing on rebuilding my life. I sold the house Lena and I had shared, mainly because I couldn't stand to live in a place filled with memories of her lies. I moved into a smaller apartment, one where I could start fresh. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the chaos in my head. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the betrayal haunted me. I'd catch myself checking my phone, wondering if Lena was scheming again, or if Mark was still trying to manipulate the situation. I also sought therapy, not because I doubted myself, far from it, but because I needed help processing everything. My therapist told me that betrayal like this leaves deep wounds, and that it's normal to feel anger, sadness, and even guilt. I learned that I wasn't alone, that many people go through similar things, but what mattered was how I handled it. I started practicing self-care, reconnecting with old friends, and focusing on my own happiness again. One of the most surprising things was the way I started to see people differently. I realized that I'd let Lena's charm and her bitchy attitude cloud my judgment for too long. I'd ignored the small signs, the little red flags that should have been obvious from the start. I promised myself that I'd never ignore my instincts again, that I'd be more cautious about who I trusted with my life and my money. And about the money, yes, I got most of it back, but I learned a harsh lesson. Money isn't just paper or numbers on a screen. It's a symbol of trust and stability. Lena's betrayal taught me that I need to be more vigilant, to keep a tighter grip on my finances, and to never let someone manipulate me financially again. I've since started a new savings account, set up alerts for any large transactions, and hired a financial advisor I can trust. Looking back, I realized that this experience, as painful as it was, has made me stronger. It forced me to face hard truths about myself and the people around me. I learned that betrayal can come from the people you trust the most, and that sometimes you have to cut ties completely to protect yourself. I've also come to understand that healing takes time and that you can't rush through it. I still have moments of anger and sadness, but I'm learning to accept what happened and move forward. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is fragile and it's earned every single day. Be cautious, be observant, and don't ignore your gut feelings. If someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And if you get betrayed, don't beat yourself up, use it as a lesson. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness is yourself. I'm still healing, but I know I'll come out of this stronger. And I hope others do too. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that happened, I realize how much I've changed, and honestly, I'm grateful for it, though I'd never wish this pain on anyone. Losing Lena was devastating, but it forced me to confront my own boundaries, my trust issues, and my capacity to survive betrayal. I used to believe that love meant blindly trusting someone, but I've learned that trust must be earned and protected fiercely. Lena's betrayal opened my eyes to how easily things can fall apart when honesty is replaced with lies. One of the hardest lessons I've taken from this is that revenge isn't about getting even, it's about reclaiming your power. I didn't want her to get away with her lies and theft, so I fought back with everything I had: legal action, evidence, and a clear mind. That process helped me realize that I don't need to be vindictive, but I do need to stand firm in my boundaries. Revenge, for me, was about making sure she paid for what she did, not just financially but emotionally and morally. It was about making her realize that her actions have consequences. Through all of this, I've come to see the importance of self-respect. I've learned to value myself enough to walk away from someone who doesn't respect me. I've also learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply moving on and rebuilding your life better than before. I've started dating again, cautiously, but with a new sense of awareness. I no longer ignore the small red flags. I listen to my instincts and trust myself more now. Most importantly, I've come to understand that life goes on. No matter how deep the betrayal, how hard the heartbreak, you can heal. It takes time, effort, and sometimes a lot of therapy and self-reflection, but you can come out stronger. I've learned that I don't need someone's approval or validation. I just need to be true to myself. So, to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. Betrayal hurts, but it's also an opportunity for growth. Stand up for yourself, gather your strength, and never let anyone manipulate or lie to you again. Trust is precious, and it's worth protecting. I may have lost Lena, but I gained a new sense of resilience, and that's something no betrayal can take away.